Yeah, thanks again, everybody, for taking the time. You know our general format. We try to keep these short, a little bit more bite-sized on the content. I'm hoping we can go deep on some security topics today, but a ton of questions were submitted, and my kind of goal here is to keep it to our typical 30 minutes. I think Mona and I can probably go over by, an extra 5-10 minutes. Let's see how kind of freely flowing the additional questions are. Maybe Mona, I'll kick things off. I think everybody's, seen me do dozens of webinars here over the years. And so give a quick intro about yourself. And just for those that are wondering, Augmentt has reached out to Mona, and she's been consulting with us for a while just on security best practices and kind of vetting some of the trends and things that we're seeing. So that was kind of the genesis of this webinar, is I was getting asked questions that are above my pay grade. So I love being able to pull in an actual expert. So Mona, I'll hand it over to you.
Thanks so much, Ali. Hi, everybody. My name is Mona Ghadiri. I'm a Microsoft Security MVP. I currently work for Augmentt, who is a managed services provider, Microsoft's number one security partner. But today I'm here as a Microsoft security expert, and I'm here to answer questions about Microsoft's portfolio of security solutions. Most of my focus and my history has been around EDR and SIEM tools. So Microsoft Sentinel, M365 Defender, Defender for Cloud. Before that, I worked on Linux operating systems for the US government. So I also have a background in security compliance, as well as, like I said, Linux operating systems. And then before that, I was a manufacturing engineer. I worked in plastics. And so I think my unique love of Microsoft security comes from a desire to integrate, a desire to measure, to look at, what I would consider to be good log sources and a method to really bring, our own IP or our own detections or our own kind of ways of influencing the platform. So in my role today, I run our product team, and then I also work with various other companies to help make them successful with Microsoft. So I'm excited to be here. You can ask me questions about security operations, about tools, about design, about pretty much anything. But I'm excited to be here. So ready to get started when you are, Ali.
Awesome. Yep, let's do it. So just to recap, we had asked everybody who was interested in the webinar, and Augmentt has our own technical advisory board. So about 100 MSPs that participate in polls, surveys, product roadmap conversations, and things roughly broke into these areas. We had a couple other categories that just got 0 votes, like Internet of Things and other elements. So it was interesting to see kind of how everything shook out at the end of the day. So SIM kind of came in 3rd place, and then the bulk of it ended up being those 2 green buckets around, best practices or configuration management, posture management, and then a little bit of the monetization, how to go to market. And that definitely is reflected in the questions. And SOC operations was in there. I think we'll talk. Some of the SOC operation questions will probably get addressed tactically as we go through the topics of alerting and monitoring, and also configuration, and then also a little bit of the, how to be profitable delivering a managed service. So just for format for the webinar, we will leave the Q&A open-ended. Ask a question anytime. Like I said, we always try to kind of finish up in 25 minutes and then save that last 5 minutes for any open-ended Q&A. If we don't get to your question, don't worry about it. I'll ping Mona after the webinar, and I'll send her the little spreadsheet, and we'll just get back to people individually. So if there's not time for the question, or if we just don't have time to get through all of the questions, don't worry. We'll try to do our best there. As far as the questions go, you saw the topics. So I think it's kind of SIM, posture management, and managed services, like the business side of it. So those are our 3 kind of areas. As far as the types of questions, I kind of saw them from a perspective of, what are the problems today? Then there was a ton of just practical, tactical how-tos. That I think is the bulk of it. I think it was like, that's probably 50% of the questions, is that middle piece. And then there wasn't a ton on the future kind of forward looking, et cetera, but there was a couple good ones. So I figured I'd keep them in there. So we'll try to spend about 5 minutes on to the state of security today, 10 minutes, 10 to 15 on practical tips, and then maybe 5 to close out on kind of more forward looking. And then I'll check the Q&A and see what we got for as far as questions go. So I'll stop sharing because I think this is mostly just going to be you and me chatting, Mona. But so I'll kind of bang through these, and then I'll try to keep track of time to make sure we don't spend all of our time in one area. So as far as so the first question is, what are the biggest threats that are facing SMBs today, and how should we go about locking those down?
I mean, I think the human element and where the human interacts with the machine, right, are always going to be the most interesting or engaging places, right? So things like email, thinking things about user access, are really going to be the places where the bad guys are trying to get in. So whether that's more traditional things like phishing, smishing, if you haven't gotten a text message saying some post office person is trying to deliver you something, you'll get one soon, right? But you can see that there is this ever evolving list of requests that come in from your email or various other forms. We've seen them come through Teams, in recent history, right? So that attack vector, whether it's email or Teams, right? The same idea of uploading attachments or exchanging of information, data exfiltration, all of those still apply, right? So there's definitely a component there where you need I love Defender for this very reason. If you do step up to that E5 license, I know it is a little pricey, but if you do end up going in that direction, you can use Defender, MDO, Defender for Office, for everything from your attack simulation to the phishing trigger button itself to the email gateway. So you've just potentially gotten rid of 3 other competing solutions that each have specifically tried to do, one of these various operations, right? Maybe they have the phishing, box, and they have the attack simulation, and that's packaged together today. But whether it's Proofpoint or KnowBe4 or whatever, right? There's an idea to come in and say, actually, what you're spending on these other things for what you want to protect, you can do that really easily with Microsoft. I would say the other kind of attack vector place that I'm always worried about are other places where people enter their credentials. So if you have a user-facing website, if you are engaging with collecting B2C information, any of those types of websites or that kind of, that's called like external attack surface, really needs to be part of what you're considering as your footprint. So whether you're thinking about on the inside or you're thinking about the outside, you really need to consider those attack vectors as being equally important. And you can use Microsoft technology to help you with both of them. On the external attack side, right, we have EASM, which is Microsoft's Risk IQ acquisition repackaged into a Microsoft solution, right? So those are a couple of examples.
Yeah, so it's funny you said the text message for the fake shipping, etc. I almost order everything exclusively from Amazon, but I was like, I really wanted this other product. And while it was crossing the border, DHL called me over the phone and wanted me to provide my passport and confirm my visa number. And I'm like, there's no way I'm doing that. And they're sure. And I'm like, yeah, it's not going to happen. And then they sent an email as well. I'm like, no, I'd rather not get this product than just give away this information to some,
rando, right? Who you don't know where they're writing it down. Right, yeah. Exactly. That's really important information. Absolutely.
And we had, I don't think I told you this, Mona, but we had a business advisor call yesterday. So we get smaller groups of MSPs, 7 business owners, just to talk about, the challenges of selling security. And one of the questions was, what attacks and what problems are you seeing from a security perspective? And there was just story after story after story of, the wire transfer fraud that got $100,000 out of the business, it's the spear phishing attacks, the ransomware, everything. It's ongoing.
Absolutely right. I totally agree. And I think that there's this constant vigilance that I think is exhausting that we have to kind of balance with, what can our instrumentation pick up, and how can we, get to that level of vigilance without necessarily having to stare at a screen 24/7 or be worried that somebody needs to be in front of a screen all the time.
Yep. So the next question was around remote work. So how do you think remote work is affecting how service providers should approach security best practices?
Oh, wow. I mean, I think that, VPNs are dead, right? I mean, there are some reasons to have VPNs or establish those, but there are so many better authentication methods and better ways to establish trust between applications than, you know, kind of the old school like hub and spoke or site-to-site VPN, you know, kind of way of doing business. Because every time you're creating this tunnel, right, it's a tube of toothpaste problem, right? You squeeze it, you squeeze it, you squeeze it, right? The whole of the toothpaste is only a certain aperture, right? And either you're going to blow the line, right, and your toothpaste is going to go everywhere, or you're going to be limited to how much toothpaste you can squeeze out of the bottle, right? And so that trade-off means bandwidth, latency, other considerations that when people are on video all day using Microsoft Teams or Zoom or whatever on a regular basis, you just have to consider there's a higher bandwidth and a higher level of, or lower level of latency that people will accept when they're on video calls. And so some of those things have changed, you know, in terms of how we relate personal devices to Active Directory, right? And allow people to do BYOD things, because if they want to work from home, but you won't give them a computer, but they say they'll bring their own computer, you know, is there a better way to facilitate that than, you know, requiring, you know, people to, you know, you only use corporate devices, right? So we've seen, you know, an influx of people doing domain join devices, which is a great thing. We've seen a lot more folks use things like Microsoft Intune to manage some of the policies for what they allow people to get, you know, their email or whatever on their personal devices. And I think those have all significantly modified what we want to detect and how we want to detect them, because when we go from, you know, everybody assumes that everything is corporate owned and it's this corporate mecca, versus Mona's got her cell phone and she's, you know, doing all this other stuff and also has her, you know, work email on her phone, right? We just have to reestablish what normal is, right? And maybe 5 years ago, everyone was like, no, you have to have corporate owned everything. But, you know, I think today there's a lot more flexibility and a lot more options in how people connect and how they register their devices that they use.
And as much as we don't want it, the consumer leads the charge every single time. And it's always ease of use. It's always unblocking business. That always seems to trump security. So we're always playing a little bit of catch up to whatever new thing they're doing. So
yeah, and people hate conditional access policies and they don't always work very well, right? So we all know, again, like, yeah, you can try to get serious and, you know, shoot first and ask later, but most of the time, right, business impact and, you know, discretion ends up being, you know, the way to trump a lot of those things just due to the nature of the risk.
Yep. Okay, so I'll just ask one more question in this kind of like today landscape, and then we'll switch gears to practical, tactical. So the question was, where is Microsoft 365 vulnerable out of box? And then I heard a couple other versions of this question of it's like, what are the places to start, or how do I convince my customer that it's like this thing isn't just safe just because it comes from Microsoft? So any vulnerabilities there, or just, you know, things not configured by default?
My favorite one right now is unified audit logging. So unified audit logging is not enabled by default. You might have heard from some of the last couple Microsoft hiccups that came out recently that, you know, in a lot of cases, if you didn't have unified audit logging turned on, you would not even have noticed that there was an issue. Also right now in private preview, Microsoft is also releasing other features that are going to enhance this area of functionality. So there's some interesting stuff just coming on the horizon as far as what Microsoft specifically is doing. I don't know if that answered your question.
Well, I think that's good. And then on the practical side, I actually just bubbled up the first question, which was like, give me the top 5 Microsoft security things to do, like top 5.
Oh, top 5 things to do. Yeah. Okay. So turn on MFA, please. Turn on MFA. Limit how many global admins you have. You know, Microsoft, it has a maximum of 8. 8 is even still too many, probably for most any firm that we're talking to that's of this size, right? You know, I like to aim for between 2 and 4, depending on, you know, seasonality, global, you know, footprint, those types of things. But in the grand scheme of things, we don't want to over provision people. Microsoft Entra has a ton of ways to establish like stale and unused service principles. So if there are, you know, service principles that were used for some application, that application is no longer used, or it's been degraded, whatever that word is, they've replaced it. There's a lot of cleanup activity. Maybe Mona got permissions for a project that she was on that she's not on anymore, right? So the idea of doing some sort of assessment around people and provisioning, I think, is a really, really great step. I think other than turning on the universal audit logs and those things, there's another set of things called ASR rules, attack surface reduction rules. A lot of people don't want to put these in block mode because it's intense and it, again, can stop business processes. But I highly recommend at least putting them in audit mode so you can see when they would have fired and start identifying how big the problem is internally for yourself. And then I would say the last thing is, if you don't have a training plan or a training program that goes along with the adoption of the tools outside of, go learn, Coursera or go pick up a Microsoft class, I would really recommend building some sort of training or continuous improvement program because Microsoft does not stop. There is new stuff all the time. There are over 800 security controls just in M365 Defender alone, right? And that
you're saying MSP's internal technician training rather than security awareness training.
Not security awareness. I'm talking, yes, like your own internal folks who will end up using the technology or who will be engaging more directly with the technology itself. Yeah. Security awareness training is great, though. I started my thesis statement with what are the biggest problems? It's people and how people engage with the tools, right? So I do think that security awareness training, if you don't already have one in place, definitely at least having that and a way for users to submit phishing emails to the firm, are really, really great first steps.
Yeah, I think we all know the problem will always be between keyboard and chair. That's
we call it the layer 8 problem sometimes.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, I'm going to try to ping pong a little bit of business, a little bit of tactical security best practice. So more on the business side, how should an MSP balance level of effort versus ROI on, we're talking kind of customer prospecting now. So when we think cybersecurity risk assessment, how much effort do you put into a cybersecurity risk assessment for kind of maximum ROI, least effort, et cetera? This was a topic yesterday on our advisory board call. It's always the cost of going above and beyond to do security, and then the customer doesn't see the value, and you just kind of ate your own margins away.
Yeah, I think it's hard. I think the business case for security is either feast or famine, right? It's like either you have all the reasons in the world to do security because you just got popped, or the board says you have to do it, or some customer is demanding it in their terms and conditions, right? Or yeah, everyone is just like, I can't afford this. We're going to get popped anyways. I might as well just pay the bad guys. Why would I pay the good guys? And I think that when I try to go back to problems that in cybersecurity we're trying to solve, right? We're fundamentally trying to not create more detections or more alerts. We're trying to create fewer alerts, right? And this is where I like configuration management and policy, because the more effort you put into configuration management and policy, the less effort it will be on the detection side to review those. Obviously, you have to tune them and you go through a little bit of a process. But the way I look at it is you can either start at the end, right, and say, here's what's in my SIM or my log management tool, and try to tease out the rat's nest and back calculate, how did we get here and why do we need these things? And is there any reason to do these things? And oh, yes, no, maybe we used to have some audit reason to do it, and kind of work backwards. Or you can start kind of at the, where is my pain? What do I need to do? And I think in a lot of cases, if they're starting at the beginning, it's really, like I said, it's either about consolidation, right? So the email example, taking 3 tools down to 1, or it's about, kind of that idea of simplicity and integration, right? Which is, even if I am buying an email gateway and an endpoint tool and a CASB, at least they all talk to each other.
Yeah.
Right. So the idea of that, I think they're up to like 65 trillion signals or 80 trillion signals. I keep track of it. But Microsoft has the best data sources of anyone. So if I'm looking at this same problem, like if I want to start at the end or the beginning and I'm Microsoft, I start at the end because they have all of the data already, right? I mean, think of how much telemetry they have, just in general. I mean, I know not everyone's a Microsoft fan, but when you think about who has the data and what they can do with it, I mean, it's a really easy choice.
Got it. So, there's definitely a process, a tool consolidation, the synergy of using kind of a, that single pane of glass approach. Definitely, totally get it. I'll stay on business. So this is just the outright, how can I convince my customer to purchase managed security services? And I laughed when I saw it because that's like the big question that MSPs always ask us. And my comment is, I've seen the people who we had a story yesterday on the advisory board of the business got breached, wire transfer fraud to the tune of $100,000. Then the owner of the company had their personal Amex hacked, and they racked up tens of thousands of dollars on their personal Amex. And these things happened, and then the customer still refused to buy security. And so it's like, you can have the person who you showed them one CSRA, they see a bunch of risk, and they're like, I had no idea, and they lock everything down. And then you have the person who just lost, tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars, and they still don't get it. And so there's definitely a human element, but any tips there on, like, you've done this at companies, you've done it in a managed
Yeah, I mean, it's what's the
context,
best alternative? What's your alternative? Is it that you're going to do nothing? Because you can't really beat doing nothing, right? But if their alternative is anything else, build it yourself, buy it. I think about it almost like cybersecurity is like buying furniture, right? There are people who are going to be like, ship the already made dresser to my door. I will pay extra money, send me the service plan. I want to buy it all, right? And then you have people who want to buy stuff from IKEA, right? And there will always be people who want to DIY it and are comfortable with little to no instructions and will eat the margins of their own operating expenses in the process. And so I always go back to, either you're going to pay for it externally or you're going to pay for it internally. If you pay for it internally, sure, it's easy to just like smooth over some costs and say, oh yeah, no, they'll figure it out. But what we've seen is like, maybe they'll do a year of that. They always come back. They come back and they're like, you know what, we tried it. And it turns out IKEA wasn't for me. I'm not a carpenter. I wasn't going to change the design. I had no business building this. And in fact,
what the heck do I do with this leftover screw?
Yeah, now I've got 6 screws left over, right? That's exactly it, right? But when I think about how people buy washers and dryers, they don't buy washers and dryers the way that they buy furniture. And to me, it's so interesting that it's different. But to me, the problem is exactly the same. The likelihood of you saying, you know what, I don't know how to fix my dryer, and just owning that is so much higher than oh, I can turn a screw, or I can use a hammer, I can use a drill. So I think some of it is.
And this is a complete tangent, but I've seen this in every software company I've ever been at, is very few people have commentary on the complicated architecture of the software. But when it comes to the UI, everybody's got an opinion. And
oh yeah.
The simpler it seems at first glance, the more pushback you get, for sure.
Very true. And that's, I think, the other part that's hard with Microsoft is you have to kind of toggle between a couple of different screens to get to the value. If you're able to synthesize more of that information yourself without necessarily forcing the customer to go to 4 or 5 different portals to get the same experience, right? That's another way where you can take the burden off of them of collecting the information, and instead focus on synthesizing the information.
Yep, makes sense. Quick time check. Maybe I'll ask one more here, and then we'll switch to kind of more future outlook. So this is an interesting one. I'm curious to get your take on it. So, I had a partner who was asking, how do I strike a balance between I should eat the cost of this because customer expectation is Y, and, I kind of like, it's a gray area in the contract. Should I just fulfill this versus explicitly saying, you're not as secure as you think. I'm doing nothing in this area, and you should pay me to do something. Like, how do you play that tug of war, on a case-by-case basis?
I think cybersecurity should be like lawyers, right? Where there's a certain pro bono aspect to it to some degree, right? Do what's right for right's sake should be part of it, right? I mean, I would never knowingly let a customer who has an exposed open SSH, port to just do nothing. Like, that's not responsible. But also, chasing that customer has a cost. If you've already talked to them about it once and they still didn't change it, there are a lot of other implications, I think, at play. But my goal is always to, do what's right, do what's right by the customer, try to make them as secure as possible. But if it's very clear that, to your point, they got their Amex hacked and they got this money stolen and they still don't care, like, at some point, it's you go from being helpful to being compliant. And I think that that's a very healthy balance for any MSSP or MSP to have, right? You know, and at some point you have to invoke, you know, and being compliant, and not necessarily going out of your way. But I'm always team, you know, if we as a cybersecurity entity could be like lawyers and say, you know, you got to donate 100 hours every year to just because you got to do it for people who can't do it on their own. You know, I think that would be the kind of thing that would, you know, inspire a generation to care about this.
Well, and I like what you said there, and then I like a previous comment you made, which is sometimes you have to match the service to the buyer. And so the person who wants IKEA, do I have an IKEA version of my service I could give them? And I do remember one MSP I talked to who had a customer who they're like, look, you got this pretty cool tool over there. If you could just send me a digest every Friday afternoon, I'll glance through it. I'll take care of my own security. So they actually just set up a scheduled Friday afternoon report to the customer. And we all know that that is not security in the slightest, but gave the guy some peace of mind, and he was willing to pay for this really, really light, terrible version of security. So anyways.
People who treat security like a Friday afternoon thing can get a Friday afternoon solution, right? You know, the rest of us who eat, sleep, and breathe this, right? Yeah, you just got to set your expectations. I think that's a really great way to put it.
Well, hackers always wait till the weekend, right? So as long as you've checked on Friday, 2 p.m., you're good.
Yeah, right.
So a couple questions here kind of on the more forward-looking, and this one wasn't specifically an MSP question, but I just figured I'd throw it in there, is what kind of outlook do you have for up-and-coming threats that maybe you're seeing more at the enterprise or the mid-market that you think will make it to the SMB, or just vulnerabilities Microsoft's talking about in the next, and maybe give us some time horizons. Is it the next year? Is it the next 18 months? You know, what is kind of the buzz?
Yeah, I think Microsoft has kind of two categories. There's like nation state bad baddies of like stuff that, you know, is kind of always happening. I think mostly it's been, you know, Russian, Iranian, you know, North Korean Chinese adversaries, and it will continue to be that just based on the geopolitical situation that we're in right now. I think that tightening economic conditions always have an impact on the theft, and you know how easy it is to make money or get money. You know, if you look at how expensive things are getting in the grocery store, can't get out of the grocery store for less than $200, you know, my grocery cart anymore, right? So in a lot of ways, I think that a lot of people are feeling the pressure, and so as there is more financial pressure, there will be continuous you know, opportunities for cartels and other organizations, semi-legitimate businesses, to funnel money and operations, money through to different operations. I have been really excited about how Microsoft's Mystic team, MSTIC team, has been tracking adversaries. About 6 months ago, they changed how they name their bad actors to make it easier to show groupings and parallels between different actors or different methodologies, which I think has helped a lot. And if you haven't already enabled the free trial, there is a Defender for Threat Intelligence free trial you can go turn on. It's almost like baseball cards for bad baddies. So you can learn, so you can learn about the bad actors, right? Attribution is a really, really difficult problem in cybersecurity, right? Because everybody emulates everyone else. They try to pretend that they're each other, right? But a lot of the times when we ask, okay, well, what bad happened? Okay, well, what tactic did they use? Okay, well, who do you think is it? Why would they try to attack us, right? Microsoft is starting to get to attribution in a really unique way. And some of it is their AI stuff. Some of it is how much data that they have to train the models. But it is very, very interesting. And just on that AI note, you know, obviously even the bad guys are using AI, you know, for malware analysis, for reverse engineering, for modification of various things. But, you know, I think that it was really exciting. I think it was just yesterday, a couple of days ago, they took down Quackbot, or kind of like the guys behind Quackbot. So, you know, this is the best part about cybersecurity, is there's always something changing or different people trying to get at this, you know, $1 million question of who is this and why would they pick me? And the reality is sometimes it is a drive-by. There is no rhyme or reason. You just happen to be the lowest common denominator, or your front door was open when somebody jiggled it, you know. But I think we all have a much better opportunity now than ever before to draw the line between investigation and attribution.
Yeah, so the bad actor baseball cards, like I have this whole like MSP marketing strategy in mind where it's like you're sending a new baseball card to your customers every week until they
Every
buy
week, exactly,
cybersecurity.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I do think that, I've seen some different various flavors of MSPs try to get after this. Like, how do I tell somebody about new and emerging threats? Microsoft is already doing a lot of this. It can be prepackaged and repositioned as, something that you can just bring to your customer that saves them the step of Googling it, right? So many times we get questions, are we vulnerable to this? What about that? Can you tell me about this? Right? If you can programatize some of that for your customers, that also saves them time and effort, not necessarily in remediation, but in investigation and at least determining how bad how bad the problem is.
Okay, so I knew we were going to go a little bit over time, but let's just keep going. And everybody, if you need to drop off, don't worry, we're recording. I do see some Q&A. So this is my last question, then we're going to switch to what I'm seeing in the Q&A. When you switch from kind of attack vectors and what I can do as an MSP to what is Microsoft doing for me as the IT channel to make my job easier, doing this at a multi-tenant, multi-customer perspective. And like, obviously that's why Augmentt exists. We're trying to solve that kind of multi-tenancy, but are you seeing anything Microsoft native? You mentioned that things that they had on higher level license tiers, things that were off by default, there's rumblings that they're going to turn those things on. And like you said, Microsoft has more signals than any company on the planet potentially. And so they're going to know where to turn these things on, but they always struggle between, if we turn that thing on for everybody, the enterprise isn't going to care. And then 50,000 SMBs can't log in the next day just because there's no IT department. So how do you see kind of the channel element and what's Microsoft doing there?
Yeah, I think Microsoft will continue to rely on partners forever, just because there's so much, right?
Yeah.
And there's even some of the Microsoft folks, right? I mean, I've heard them say, I know a lot about this part of Microsoft, but not about that part of Microsoft.
Right.
So I think MSPs can always stay relevant by taking that horizontal approach, right? And trying to be there across multiple tools within Microsoft, but within the same category. So that's identity, compliance, or security, right? You can bite off one piece of the elephant and try to consume it at a time. I think that's one thing that I've seen that's helpful. I think from the channel perspective, also Microsoft has changed a lot of their funding programs recently, specifically to cybersecurity. So if you haven't looked into those recently or you're not familiar with them, you should reacquaint yourselves with them, because a lot of the funding mechanisms have either changed or changed the way that the programs fund them, or there are other incentive programs that exist that didn't exist before.
Someone I did see someone ask in the Q&A when we started off with kind of the top 5 best practices, they wanted that kind of written out. And so maybe after the webinar, I'll try to take a couple things, transcribe them, and just so there's like a little Coles note.
Happy to, yeah.
Can
Sure.
you send over any of those funding resources or just some of your favorite links that?
Yeah, Microsoft Cybersecurity Initiative is, I think, what it's called with Microsoft now. It used to be the MSSP program, but they've gotten rid of it. So you can think about it as MISA graduates, and then they go into various other tiers that have to do with partner performance, incentive programs. But they have retired some of the workshops. They've modified how PI funding works. So there's some new stuff out there that's definitely worth investigating if you're kind of reacquainting yourself with the Microsoft Partner Motion and Microsoft Partner Center in general.
Okay, now I'm going to audience questions here. I see at least 2. So other than the asking for some notes. So maybe we'll do these lightning round and I'll try to finish up in the next 4 minutes. There is a couple questions about the Microsoft licensing tiers, less the E5, more the business basic, business premium kind of range. And so people were asking, like, on this tier specifically, what would be the best practices? So maybe walk me through, I'm dealing with a business basic customer that's very, very light. I don't have an Azure AD Premium P1. How do I think about security there, and how would I do it more at a business premium level?
Ooh, those are the toughest ones, right? Because you hit the nail on the head. They haven't made a decision to invest in security at all.
Yep.
Right. So I usually start, especially for the Entra or the identity conversations, That's where I feel like I can get the most traction with customers. I usually don't for the, they don't care about devices. I mean, they want as few users as possible. So they're not really looking for, anything like that. But, if there are opportunities for convenience, opportunities to introduce them to things that they already have, right? In a lot of cases, things like Windows Hello or, password lists, right, have been ways to just entice them to at least pay attention, because it's not necessarily a cybersecurity thing. It's not like we're selling them cybersecurity solutions, right? But we are selling them password lists, right? Which to them is for convenience, but for us, actually does have a lot of really great cybersecurity benefits. Same thought with Teams, right? Or if you're trying to get them to the voice, video, whatever step up, equivalent, right? The same things like safe links that exist in email. You can get safe links in Teams. And you have the one, right? So just you can think about the corollaries of things that either they may already want or that they already understand, and just meet them where they are. I've had very little success going in and saying, hey, I'm a cybersecurity expert, you should listen to me. Because generally speaking, they're just like, you work on a computer on made up things that you can't prove to me even happened. And you said this money is gone, but was the money ever there anyways? It's all just...
No, I love that idea of the positioning of the security feature you want as like, don't even talk security. It's just like, hey, great news. You don't need your password anymore. Like we just enabled Azure SSO for our 1Password internally. So now I don't have to sign into 1Password, and it inherits MFA from Microsoft. And
right,
so,
we just switched everybody to FIDO2 keys, right? Because nobody wants to have a second BYOD device have to be their second method for authentication. So we just gave everybody keys, right? And it's like, this is really convenient for you. You can control, and you don't have to pay for people's phones anymore. You can just pay for their key fob.
Yep.
Right. So you can position it again as like, it's a terms of convenience, or it's a cost thing, right? But it has security implications, security benefits. Because I'd rather pay for 50 FIDO tokens than 50 phones.
Yes.
Right. So it just comes back to, to your point, positioning it around the convenience side that happens to have cybersecurity benefits instead.
Perfect. Love it. So there was a question about, it was more of a best practices. So outside of MFA and anti-phishing, what's the next best thing? I think you already kind of addressed that. So maybe I'll just include that in the notes afterward. How would you go about getting to 100% compliance around security awareness training? So this would be end user.
Oh, man, I wish like we could do that. honestly, like the human firewall effect, or whatever you want to call it, I like it better when people can ask each other if they think it's something bad than having single line submissions. So something that I've noticed at some firms is that they'll have like a Teams channel for security questions. And instead of it being necessarily about building a user submitting phishing inbox, they have a Teams channel where it's actually crowdsourced to some degree. Someone will just be like, hey, is this a phish? And like theoretically, the security team will look at it, but guess what happens? A lot of other people look at it and they're like, you know what? I don't think this is a phish. Or they're like, you know what? Security, you guys should probably look at it. And so I think that there are other methods and ways to kind of solve for this, user submitted phishing problem in innovative ways, or in ways that use crowdsourcing or uses the other people internally. Because if I have to guess and I'm just submitting it to a phishing inbox, the chances of me submitting a bunch of false positives are so much higher, because I'd rather guess wrong than be wrong.
Yep. No, our head of security is pretty like on point with all the simulations, and so like everyone's paranoid internally to click anything even remotely resembling an external email.
Yeah, they did one with Copilot on us recently. They were like, here's your Copilot link. We were all like,
yeah,
I actually wanted that.
Now I screenshot things and I'm like, are you trying to simulate phishing right now?
Exactly, right. If you had the ability to crowdsource it, just think of how many fewer false positives anyone would have to review. So make the customer be their own first review with their own people, and then you look at the detections. You look at whatever they submit after that, instead of immediately saying, oh no, that you want someone else to look at all those emails, for example, because that's not effective, and it's not a cost-efficient model to like try to outsource like exchange admin, reviews of emails that people think are bad.
So this one's a bit of a longer one, but kind of reading between the lines, it sounds like there was a breach and cybersecurity insurance is coming after the MSP, and they had some level of documentation for what the customer purchased, not purchased, and SLAs were fairly well defined, but it's still been a slog. And so what are your recommendations around best practices there on just when it comes to liability, documentation, et cetera?
I think it always helps to have a good cyber insurance partner, even if they're not the firm that that is bringing the case, right? So just having a partner for cyber insurance, I don't care who it is, right? Just so you have a friendly, so if it happens to you, you have someone friendly to ask. I always like it when folks have policies through the partner insurer rather than a third party insurer, because things can happen a little bit more gracefully. So my other recommendation is, once you have the partner, try to convince them to move off of their cyber insurance provider they have right now and move to a different one. The nice thing about moving to Microsoft tools or having customers on Microsoft tools is that the cyber insurance providers can have more documentation. You can give them the customer secure score. You can pull specific data about policies that are set and when they were set because of the audit log stuff that we were talking about earlier. You don't have to be reliant on your own documentation necessarily. Whereas if you had CrowdStrike or a Splunk or something else deployed, like, they're not going to help you, and you're not going to get nearly the level of support that you would have, just telemetry wise, without having to do a ton of digging, which no SMB can afford to do, and probably don't have the people to do anyways.
Okay, so last question, and then I'm going to wrap up. So someone says they're using SentinelOne today as their antivirus, but I'm going to put any antivirus in there that's not Microsoft. And they're saying, Microsoft Defender has gotten a lot better over the years. Do you think that there's a benefit to using both concurrently, or are you at a comfort level now where you think Windows-based defense is strong enough?
I'm in a good place with anything other than like containers and Kubernetes and maybe some other Linux-based outliers. I'd say if you're a heavy Linux shop, SentinelOne probably is still a better choice. But when you think about the combination of having to manage the devices and the agents and having them potentially already using Intune or something like that to do, or configuration manager to do the configuration, it just is again, the integration pieces and where you connect all these things to each other just becomes so much more easy. When you do it with Microsoft, you don't have, there's just not as much overhead of just making sure the stuff is still even functional, or that you have to have the instrumentation to determine if something is wrong or if it's not working or not, authenticating properly. Microsoft does all of that for you. It's super nice. The overhead
and for you, just to clarify, Mona, when you say Windows Defender, you also said it's a both and Windows Defender plus.
So yeah, So you gotta have the feature, or the security step up, right? We don't want just antivirus by itself. We want an EDR tool, ideally, with the antivirus. But if you're going to deploy something like Defender for Endpoint or Windows Defender, right? I mean, if you're doing Defender for Endpoint, you don't need SentinelOne. That's duplicative. But if you wanted to, you could deploy Defender for Endpoint in passive mode with SentinelOne, and it would be fine. But I really never recommend deploying more than one antivirus or more than one EDR tool at the same time. They will clash, and definitely will cause a blue screen or other configuration problems.
Awesome. I appreciate it. Everybody, I just posted in the chat if you wanted to get an Augmentt trial set up. That's the link there. Or, of course, go to the website, augmentt.com, and sign up for a trial. Our goal in life essentially is to streamline a lot of the things that we talked about today. Of course, we're on a mission just like you are, just like Mona is at her MSP to improve everything and automate everything. But this is a moving target, and we're constantly trying to evolve and support the current best practices because the bad guys aren't sleeping and things are changing all the time. Mona, I appreciate the time today. That was awesome. I love these chats.
My pleasure, anytime. And feel free to find me on LinkedIn or connect with me otherwise. I'm always here to help and grow our Microsoft security community. Thanks for your time.
I love it. Awesome. Have a good day, everybody. Thanks for the time. And again, always curious to get feedback on webinars. If you liked the format, if you would have liked us to focus in any area, just let us know. We'll probably take another stab at this in maybe in Q4 or early next year, kind of 2024 outlook. So have a good day, everybody. Take care.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.